God is shifting things in your life. Get ready for His new season. Life has a way of making us feel as though everything is stuck, as if the doors in front of us are locked and the ground beneath us refuses to move. Yet even when things seem motionless on the surface, God is at work in ways we cannot see. Right now, He is shifting things for you. He is arranging people, places, and circumstances to align with His greater purpose for your life. The quiet moments where it feels like nothing is happening are often the very moments when God is moving the most. Just because you can't see the change doesn't mean heaven isn't busy on your behalf. The hand of God is steady, powerful, and intentional, and it is positioning you for what is next. So often, what looks like delay is actually preparation. What feels like loss is often a clearing of the path, and what seems like an ending is truly the start of something new. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who raised dry bones into armies, and who turned a crucifixion into the world's greatest victory, is the same God who is shifting things in your life today. He knows what you need, when you need it, and how to bring it about. You don't have to understand every detail to trust that His plan is unfolding. This moment is not the end. It is the threshold of a new season. The discomfort you feel is evidence of growth. The uncertainty you face is the soil where faith takes root. And the changes around you are the signs that God is moving you from where you've been to where He is calling you. Lean in, open your heart, and be ready because the shift has already begun. Recognizing the seasons of change. Every life is written in seasons, and no season ever stays the same. Just as the earth moves from winter to spring, from summer to harvest, your life shifts through times of preparation, growth, testing, and breakthrough. Recognizing those seasons is one of the most important steps in walking with God, because it teaches you to discern His timing rather than forcing your own. Sometimes you might feel frustrated because things aren't happening as quickly as you want, or because opportunities seem to slip through your fingers. But in reality, it isn't that God has abandoned you, it's that you're standing in a season designed to shape you for the next. Think of Abraham, who was called out of his homeland with nothing more than a promise. He didn't see the fullness of it immediately. He had to walk through years of uncertainty, trusting God step by step. Joseph was given dreams of greatness as a young boy, but before he ever sat in a palace, he endured betrayal, slavery, and prison. Ruth faced widowhood and loss, yet her obedience in a hard season led her directly into the lineage of Jesus Christ. Each of these people had to understand that their season was not their destiny. It was a stepping stone toward it. The same is true for you. When you feel like you're in the middle of a winter, when nothing is blooming, when everything feels cold and lifeless, don't forget that winter is always followed by spring. New life is always on the horizon. God uses certain seasons to prune away what doesn't belong, to strengthen what is weak, and to prepare your heart to carry the weight of blessing. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 says that to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. That means even this moment, whether joyful, painful, or uncertain, has a purpose under the hand of God. Learning to recognize your season allows you to respond in faith instead of fear. In seasons of waiting, you can lean into prayer. In seasons of testing, you can hold fast to the word. In seasons of breakthrough, you can step forward with boldness. When you live with the awareness that God works through seasons, you won't despise the one you're in. Instead, you'll look for the lessons, the growth, and the quiet hand of God at work. The shift may not always look dramatic, but it is always significant. Seasons are God's way of preparing you for greater things. When God closes doors, He is redirecting you. One of the hardest things for us to understand in life is why certain doors close. Maybe it was an opportunity you prayed for, a relationship you thought would last, a career path you believed was meant for you, and suddenly, that door shuts, and it feels final, painful, and confusing. But what if that closed door is not God's rejection of you, but his redirection for you? What if his no in this moment is actually a greater yes waiting just ahead? Closed doors are not always a punishment. Many times they are a form of God's protection. He sees the future you cannot see. He knows the people and places that may look appealing now, but would eventually harm your calling. He understands the traps the enemy is trying to set, and sometimes his love shows itself in the form of a firm, "This is not the way." Think about the Apostle Paul. In Acts chapter 16, Paul and his companions tried to preach the gospel in Asia, but Scripture says the Holy Spirit did not allow them to go. Then they tried to enter another region, but again the Spirit of Jesus closed the door. It wasn't until Paul received a vision of a man in Macedonia calling for help that he understood God's redirection. And because Paul obeyed that closed door, the gospel spread powerfully into Europe. The same principle is alive in your story. A closed door might sting, but it is not the end. It is God clearing the path, so you won't waste years in the wrong place, with the wrong people, or under the wrong assignment. When you stand before a shut door, you have two choices: to pound on it in frustration, or to step back in faith and say, "Lord, if you've closed it, then I trust you have something better ahead." That posture of trust will shift your perspective from disappointment to expectation. Think of Jesus at the tomb of Lazarus. Mary and Martha thought the door of healing had closed because their brother had died. But Jesus said in John chapter 11, verse 4, that this sickness would not end in death, but for the glory of God. Sometimes what you think is over is only the stage being set for God's greater power to be revealed. The door you thought was sealed forever may only be the pathway to a miracle you couldn't have imagined. So, if you're standing in front of something that has ended, resist the urge to despair. Believe that God is a master architect who never tears down without a plan to build something better. Every closed door is really a divine redirection, leading you closer to your true assignment. It may not make sense right now, but later you will look back and thank him that he didn't let you settle for less than his best. God removes the wrong people to make room for the right ones. One of the most difficult parts of God's shifting process is when he begins to move people in and out of your life. Relationships are powerful, and God knows that who you walk with will shape where you end up. Sometimes, the pain of losing someone, a friend, a partner, even a mentor, feels unbearable. But many times, their departure is not a sign of your failure. It is a sign of God's protection and alignment. He removes certain people not because they are all bad, but because they cannot go where he is taking you. Look at the story of Abraham and Lot. God had promised Abraham the land of Canaan, but as long as Lot traveled with him, strife and conflict followed. It wasn't until Abraham separated from Lot that God told him to lift up his eyes and see the fullness of the promise. That separation was painful, but it was necessary for Abraham to walk into the next season of blessing. In the same way, you may be holding on to relationships out of loyalty, comfort, or fear of being alone. But God knows they are weighing you down. He is shifting your circle to prepare you for his promise. Jesus himself modeled this. Though he ministered to multitudes, he chose 12 disciples to walk closely with him. And even within the 12, he drew Peter, James, and John into moments the others did not see. When it came to fulfilling his mission, Jesus was intentional about who surrounded him. He knew the importance of divine alignment. Judas was part of his circle for a season, but even Judas's betrayal became part of God's larger plan. That teaches us something vital. Not everyone who starts with you will finish with you, and not everyone who leaves you is your enemy. Some departures are simply part of the shift. It may hurt when people walk away, but remember this: God will never subtract without the intention of adding. He will never remove without the intention of replacing with something better. When the wrong people leave, it makes space for the right people to come. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20 says that whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm. God knows the weight of your calling, and He knows you cannot carry it with the wrong people tied to your side. So if you're grieving a loss or wrestling with confusion over why someone isn't in your life anymore, take heart. God is not trying to punish you, He is trying to position you. The shift in your relationships may feel like a breaking, but it is actually a building. Trust Him with who He removes and who He brings, because when God shifts the people around you, He is also shifting you closer to the destiny He designed for you. Shifts begin in the spiritual before they manifest in the natural. Every move of God begins in a realm you cannot see before it ever shows up in the realm you live in. The natural is only the echo of what God has already released in the spiritual. This is why so often your circumstances may look the same, yet you sense in your spirit that something is different. That uneasiness, that stirring, that holy restlessness, it is God preparing you for a shift that has already been spoken in heaven. Daniel understood this principle. In Daniel chapter 10, he prayed and fasted for understanding, but for 21 days nothing changed. On the 21st day, an angel appeared and told him that from the first day he set his heart to seek God, his prayer had been heard. The delay was not because God ignored him, it was because a spiritual battle was taking place in the unseen realm. The shift had already been set in motion, but it took time for it to manifest on earth. This is why you cannot measure God's activity by what you see around you. The enemy wants you to believe that silence means nothing is happening, but heaven's silence is often heaven's strategy. Behind the curtain of the visible world, angels are moving, chains are breaking, and pathways are being cleared. What you call waiting is often God's way of aligning the timing of the spiritual with the timing of the natural. Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against spiritual powers in heavenly places. That means every shift comes with opposition, but also with divine authority. When you press into prayer, when you fast, when you worship in the middle of uncertainty, you are engaging in the realm where the true battle is won. Victories are secured in the spiritual long before they are celebrated in the natural. Think about the walls of Jericho. Long before they crumbled, God had already declared the city delivered into Israel's hands. The physical collapse of the walls was only the outward evidence of an invisible promise already sealed. In the same way, what you are about to see in your life, the breakthrough, the healing, the new direction, has already been written in heaven. You may not see it yet, but it is real, and it is on its way. So when you feel like nothing is happening, don't lose faith. Instead, increase your prayer. Instead of doubting, worship louder. Instead of backing down, stand firmer. Because God's shifts start in a realm beyond your sight, and faith is the bridge that carries you into that reality. Hold on, because the unseen is becoming seen, and what God has already spoken will surely come to pass. Trusting God when the shift feels uncomfortable. When God begins to shift things in your life, it often doesn't feel smooth or easy. In fact, His movement can feel unsettling, confusing, even painful. We like the idea of change when it brings blessing, but many times the path to that blessing is paved with discomfort. God allows the ground beneath your feet to shake, not because He wants to harm you, but because He wants to move you from what is familiar into what is fruitful. Think of the Israelites leaving Egypt. They cried out for deliverance, and God set them free. But their freedom came with wilderness. They left behind the chains of slavery, yet immediately faced hunger, thirst, and uncertainty. Many of them even longed to return to Egypt, not because Egypt was good, but because Egypt was familiar. This is the danger we face when God shifts us, clinging to the old because it feels safe, even when it was never meant to sustain us. The wilderness is uncomfortable, but it is also the place where God reveals Himself as provider, protector, and guide. James chapter 1, verses 2 to 4 says to count it all joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete. That means the discomfort you feel is not wasted. It is growing you, stretching you, preparing you. The shift may push you out of your comfort zone, but it is also pushing you into your calling. Even Jesus experienced this. In the Garden of Gethsemane, as he prepared to face the cross, he was in anguish. He prayed with such intensity that his sweat fell like drops of blood, and yet he surrendered, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." The greatest shift in history, the salvation of the world, came through the most uncomfortable moment in Jesus' life. That moment reminds us that obedience in discomfort often leads to glory beyond imagination. You may feel unsettled right now. The job doesn't look secure. The relationship feels fragile. The future seems foggy. But don't let the discomfort convince you that God is absent. His Spirit is closer than ever in those moments, guiding you, strengthening you, and assuring you that His plan is still good. Growth rarely happens in ease. It happens in the stretching, in the waiting, in the unfamiliar places where all you can do is lean on Him. So, when the shift feels uncomfortable, don't fight it. Trust it. Trust that God knows what He is doing, even when you don't understand it. Trust that His love is greater than your fear. Trust that the same God who led Israel through the wilderness, who led Daniel through the lion's den, and who led Paul through storms and prisons, is leading you too. Discomfort is not the end. It is the doorway to destiny. The blessing is in the shift. Every time God shifts something in your life, His purpose is not to leave you empty, but to position you for blessing. What may first feel like loss, confusion, or disruption is often the soil where new life is about to spring forth. The blessing is not always visible at the beginning of the shift, but it is always hidden within it. When God changes your direction, when He closes doors, when He removes people or rearranges your circumstances, He is not subtracting from you. He is preparing to add something greater to you. Consider Elijah during the drought. God told him to go to the brook Cherith, and there He commanded ravens to bring him food. That was unusual provision in an unusual place. But when the brook dried up, Elijah might have felt abandoned. Yet God's shift was intentional. He sent Elijah to Zarephath, where a widow was waiting not only to sustain Elijah, but to receive her own miracle of provision. If Elijah had clung to the drying brook, he would have missed the blessing God had prepared in the new place. The blessing was not in staying comfortable, it was in obeying the shift. The same truth runs through the story of Israel entering the promised land. The wilderness was not their destination, it was the transition. The land flowing with milk and honey was waiting, but they had to embrace the shift from slavery to freedom, from wandering to possessing. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9 records God telling Joshua to be strong and courageous, for the Lord would be with him wherever he went. The courage to step into the shift was the key to unlocking the blessing. The blessing is also revealed in obedience. Think of Peter. He had fished all night and caught nothing, but when Jesus told him to cast his net on the other side, everything changed. That one act of obedience to a divine instruction turned emptiness into overflow. The boat was filled until the nets began to break. The blessing was waiting, but it was on the other side of the shift. In your life, the same principle applies. You may be standing at the edge of a dried brook, holding on to something that once worked but no longer carries life. You may be staring at a wilderness that feels endless, or at instructions from God that don't seem logical. But if you trust Him enough to move when He says move, you will discover that the blessing is not in what you left behind. It is in what He is leading you toward. The shift may not feel like a blessing at first. It may come with tears, questions, or uncertainty. But every step of faith you take positions you for God's abundance. He is not trying to take from you. He is trying to lead you into more than you imagined. The blessing has always been in the shift. because the shift is where God shows his power, his faithfulness, and his ability to do exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think. Walking boldly into your new season. When God shifts things in your life, the final step is not just to recognize it, not just to endure it, but to walk boldly into the new season he has prepared for you. Too often, we spend so much time looking back at what was lost, what changed, or what closed, that we miss the beauty of what God has opened. The shift is not meant to paralyze you, it is meant to propel you. Think about Joshua after Moses died. The people of Israel were grieving the loss of their leader, but God spoke directly to Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, saying, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them." God was saying, yes, that season has ended, but a new one is beginning. Step forward. Joshua had to put aside fear, doubts, and comparisons, and move boldly into the assignment God had given him. And as soon as they stepped into the Jordan, the waters parted, proving God's power would meet them in their obedience. The same is true for you. There comes a moment when you cannot just pray about the shift, you must act on it. Fear will whisper that you are not ready. Doubt will tell you that you might fail. Comfort will tempt you to stay where you are. But faith is about stepping out before you see the full picture. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8 reminds us that Abraham obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. He walked into a new season, not with a map, but with trust in the one who called him. Walking boldly does not mean you won't feel nervous. Boldness is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. David still faced a giant. Esther still risked her life before the king. Peter still had to step out of the boat onto water. But every act of bold faith was met with God's miraculous power. Your new season is not something to tiptoe into. It is something to embrace with confidence, declaring that if God is for you, no one can be against you. Declare his promises over your life. Speak life over your future. Stand firm in the truth that he who began a good work in you will carry it to completion. This is the moment to release hesitation. This is the moment to leave behind what was and step fully into what is ahead. God is shifting things not to leave you stranded, but to launch you into a season of growth, blessing, and destiny. So lift your head, square your shoulders, and walk boldly. The same God who brought you this far will be the one who carries you forward. Your new season is here. Step into it with courage and faith. Conclusion. God is shifting things for you not to harm you, not to confuse you, but to move you into the fullness of his plan. Every season you've walked through, every closed door you've faced, every person who has left, and every moment that has felt uncomfortable has been part of his divine orchestration. Nothing has been wasted. What felt like endings were really beginnings. What felt like setbacks were truly setups. What felt like silence was preparation for a greater sound of victory in your life. The same God who shifted Joseph from a prison to a palace, who shifted Ruth from widowhood to a lineage of kings, who shifted Peter from a fisherman to a fisher of men, is the same God working behind the scenes in your story. He is moving you from the old into the new, from sorrow into joy, from uncertainty into purpose. You don't have to figure it all out. You simply have to trust him enough to step forward in faith. This is not the time to hold on to what was. It is the time to embrace what is coming. Let go of the fear that whispers you are not ready, and hold on to the promise that says God's grace is sufficient. The shift may feel unfamiliar, but it is carrying you straight into the blessing he designed with your name on it. So walk boldly, stand firm. Keep your eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. Because what God has begun in you, he will surely complete. The shift is not something to dread, it is something to celebrate. It is the evidence that heaven has marked you for more. And as you step into this new season, may your heart be filled with expectancy, your faith be anchored in His word, and your spirit rejoice, knowing that God is not done with you yet. The shift has begun, and the best is still ahead.